Fun fact, I hate driving. I absolutely despise it. The fact that people are okay with the very concept of driving baffles me. These giant metal machines move around at high speeds, some of them piloted by absolute morons, and have the potential to end the lives of those within the vehicle, as well as those hit by the vehicle. And everyone's just fine with that, nobody bats an eye. They even turned it into a sport. Ridiculous. Driving is awful. It's stressful, it's dangerous, and I hate it. But if you take driving and put it in wacky, colourful video game worlds with racetracks littered with dangerous turns, leaps and death traps, you can count me in, so long as I get to enjoy it from my living room. Kart races are a lot of fun. When somebody says kart racer, almost everyone's minds immediately jump to Mario Kart, the absolute classic, the game that is fun and unpredictable, the game that tears friends and families apart. It's the gaming industry's most effective homewrecker. Most of the time it's a lot of fun, and I can see why Mario Kart is considered the king of the genre. But where everyone else's minds jump, mine does not. For you see, I grew up with an alternative, Crash Team Racing. Much like the actual Crash Bandicoot trilogy, I would spend many a weekend playing Crash Team Racing and having an absolute whale of a time. As a child, I couldn't think of a better way to spend the day. I would love playing the adventure mode and getting all the way up to Glacier Park, where the game would always fittingly freeze, and I would start all over again. It was one of the games that delighted me most. But it has been a while. I've not played the original Crash Team Racing since the lead up to the release of its remake, but I remember it being one of the greatest games I've ever played. So, is it as good as I remember? There's only one way to find out, so fasten your seatbelts, it's time to dive into Crash Team Racing. It's a bit unusual to see Crash in the driver's seat. Up until this point in his lifetime, he's only ever been running around on foot. He doesn't strike me as someone who knows how to drive. Yet here we are. Crash Team Racing has a handful of game modes to choose from, but I think we're going to start with the adventure mode. As far as I'm aware, adventure modes aren't common in kart races, so it's cool that this game has one. The story of this game is very simple. Nitrous Oxide, an alien from the planet Gasmoxia, comes to Earth and challenges its inhabitants to a race. If Oxide wins, he'll turn the planet into a car park. If Earth wins, Oxide fucks off back to Gasmoxia. Fairly simple stuff. If this were a platformer or any sort of game where the story is even remotely important, I'd be furious at Oxide for showing up in his vaguely dick-shaped spaceship and being the cause of a brutally lame story. But this is just a kart racer. Kart racers generally don't even have stories, so I think I can let Oxide's ridiculous car park scheme slide. The adventure mode works like this. You pick a racer and are dropped into the first hub world, Insanity Beach. Each hub world contains 4 racetracks, a crystal challenge, and a boss race, and the goal here is to go around winning races to earn trophies, defeat the boss in a race, complete the optional crystal challenge if you wish, and rinse and repeat for the remaining hub worlds. I like this whole setup. It's a very similar setup to the warp rooms from the platformer games. In fact, the whole adventure mode is structured like the platformers. You've got a main collectible for the standard levels, trophies, you've got optional collectibles, CTR tokens and relics, you've got boss fights, you've got optional levels, it has everything. But before you can get to all of that, we've got to pick a racer. In adventure mode, you can choose from one of 8 races: Crash, Cortex, Tiny, Coco, Engine, Dingadal, Polar, or Pura. Each of these races has one of 4 sets of driving stats. Crash and Cortex are both balanced races, meaning their speed, acceleration, and turning are fairly even. Tiny and Dingodal are speed races, meaning their speed is high but they have low acceleration and turning. Coco and Engine are acceleration races, meaning their acceleration is high with decent speed and turning. And finally Polar and Pura, who are turning races, meaning their turning and acceleration are high but their speed is low. It's a very important choice, because once you've chosen a racer, that's the only racer you can play as for the entire adventure mode. I've never really understood this. Why can't you swap races? We're all trying to beat Oxide together. Why does one racer have to carry the burden? I would have liked to play as the other racers and had a bit more variety. Don't get me wrong, I find the back of Crash's head to be very attractive, but I think it'd be nice to look at the back of someone else's head every now and then. I just think we should consider an open relationship. That's all I'm asking. What I've also never really understood is why your speed, acceleration, and turning stats are based on the character you're playing as. Can someone please explain to me why the driving stats are linked to the character you're playing as and not the kart that you're driving? The karts are the same for every character. Besides the color that they are identical, so you'd think they'd all drive the same. But somehow the character driving it is able to influence how fast it can go, how quickly it can accelerate, and how sharply it can turn? even though all the karts are exactly the same? Like, what? Surely that can't be right. It's like if 3 people wanted to heat up some instant noodles in the microwave, and for the first person it takes 30 seconds, for the second person it takes a minute but the platter rotates faster, and for the third person it takes 2 minutes but the platter rotates in the other direction. That doesn't make any sense. They might be different people with different attributes, but they're all using the same microwave. The heating capabilities of the microwave do not change depending on who is using it. It's just something that's always baffled me. You should be able to choose a character, then also choose which driving stats you want to use. That makes so much more sense. But look, in the grand scheme of things, not being able to switch between characters nor being able to pick a driving style independently of those characters isn't really too important. I mean, people are out fighting wars. Anyway, let's get back on track. Literally. The main appeal of a kart racer is the kart racing, so let's drill down into the main gameplay. It is fucking brilliant. I went into this game expecting brilliance, but even still, I was blown away by just how brilliant its brilliance was. Crash Team Racing has some of the most engaging, enthralling, and enjoyable gameplay I've ever experienced. And I've played a lot of games, so that's a big statement. A part of me fears that if I try and explain why the gameplay is so good, I won't be able to do it justice, but I'll give it a whirl anyway. Obviously, CTR shares the same foundation as other kart races. You race against a handful of other racers, driving through racetracks loaded with hazards, chucking items to crush the hopes and dreams of your enemies as you go. Whoever completes the third lap first, wins. Simple concept, nothing spectacular about that. But there is something spectacular about CTR's controls. It's incredibly tight, very responsive, and orgasmically satisfying, particularly when it comes to drifting. The drift mechanics and the boost system are just incredible. In CTR, when you drift, you can boost up to 3 times to build up some more speed. And I think it's what makes this whole game such a joy to play. Drifting through a turn and getting 3 perfect boosts is what it means to be alive. Because of CTR's controls and mechanics, you're able to build up a rhythm of boosts, gain a lot of speed, take tight corners, and really demolish the competition. It's gameplay that rewards skill, and mastering it makes you feel unstoppable. On top of that, I really like the way the items work in this game. The items themselves are fairly stock standard. You've got items that give you a speed boost, items that hone in on the person in front of you, items that target first place, items that target everyone, pretty ordinary stuff. But this game's Wumpa Fruit system adds an extra twist that I really like. If you collect 10 Wumpa Fruit, you'll become juiced up. Not only does this mean that you're able to drive slightly faster, but it also means your items become more powerful. For example, a TNT crate is an item that you can place on the track. If a racer hits it, the TNT will stick to them and explode after a few seconds if they're unable to bounce it off. When you're juiced up, the TNT will become a nitro crate, which will explode immediately if a racer drives into it. It's something that adds to the chaotic nature of kart races, and I enjoy it. This, combined with the phenomenal control and mechanics of the game, makes CTR a thoroughly fun game that is hard to put down. Genuinely, the way this game plays and controls is damn near perfect. I have nothing negative to say about it. To complement that damn near perfect gameplay is some brilliant track design. The tracks in this game are absolutely fantastic. They've got plenty of sick twists and turns, forks in the roads, massive leaps, and some can be pretty tough to race well on. Tiny Arena is a long track that really tests your endurance. Hot Air Skyway has lots of tricky turns, especially the one at the end. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the corkscrew turn in Dragon Mines, which I believe was actually designed by Satan. The tracks also have some really creative shortcuts. The Sewer Speedway shortcut is a classic, but there are some pretty cool ones in tracks like Blizzard Bluff, Poppy's Pyramid, and Polar Pass. Though there are some difficult ones, I believe the Minecart shortcut in Dragon Mines is another one of Satan's contributions. Pretty much every track in the game is an absolute blast to race on. The only track I can see an argument for being a little bland is Slide Coliseum, because it's just a pure and simple course with no wacky or elaborate kart racer twist, but even so, it's good for testing out your true driving skill. Whether it's a tricky course, an elaborate shortcut, or a simple test of ability, every track has something to offer. Even basic tracks like Crash Cove have to be respected. They're all solidly designed and they're so much fun to race on. I haven't even talked about how great they look either. The tracks are great from a gameplay focused perspective, so when you add a layer of that signature Crash Bandicoot flavor, it only gets better. There's a lot of variety in the environments and locations in these tracks, and they're all bright and colourful with their own personality. It warms my little heart to see the level themes from the platformer games be turned into these brilliant race tracks. And the music is perfectly suited to them as well. Each song is upbeat and gets you in the zone for some chaotic kart racing. They're all very memorable and catchy as well, to the point where I've constantly been whistling them since playing the game, and my lips are sore as fuck. As far as presentation goes, Crash Team Racing is incredible. I took a little bit of a detour there, so let's focus back in on the adventure mode. There's a lot to appreciate here. Aside from winning a trophy from each track in a hub world, you're also required to defeat a boss in a race. I like the concept of these boss races. You need to try and beat your opponent who has a clear advantage over you in the form of an endless supply of items. The boss races can actually challenge you as well. I found that during regular races, I was able to create a pretty big lead over the other races, but in boss races, that wasn't as easy to do. Sure, it becomes easy when you overtake the boss, you've essentially won as soon as you're in front of them, but overtaking the boss can be hard, especially when they're leaving a trail of items behind them that combo you like it's a fighting game. I also like how Oxide gets an unfair head start in the final boss race, and I like the boss races in general. They're a neat twist on standard races. The adventure mode isn't very long. I managed to beat the main story after roughly 2 hours, which isn't a lot. It was a shame, I was having a lot of fun, but it came to an end a lot sooner than I wanted. Which is not the first time I've said that. Naturally, after experiencing 2 hours of phenomenal gameplay, I hungered for more. So I thought, fuck it, I'm going for 101% completion. I was going to go through and collect every CTR token and Platinum Relic, which means I get to dive into 3 different game modes: Crystal Challenges, CTR Challenges, and Relic Races. And I was so giddy at the thought of getting to play more of the game that I ran outside and threw a brick over the back fence into the neighbor's yard. Not especially relevant to the game, but I was full of adrenaline and had energy that needed releasing, and that was the best I could come up with. To reach 101% completion in CTR, you need to complete all of the Crystal Challenges, CTR Challenges, and Relic Races, as well as beating the Coloured Gem Cups. I'll talk about them in that order. Crystal Challenges are a complete departure from races. They take place on battle arenas, and the goal is to drive around and pick up all the crystals before time runs out. It's a game mode that's more about precision than speed, so they aren't as exciting as standard races because precision is a lot more boring than speed, but they're a fun way of shaking things up. CTR challenges are essentially the same as standard races, but in order to win, you need to not only finish first in the race, but you also need to collect the C's, T's, and R's that are hidden in each racetrack. It's basically a standard race with a bit of hide and seek thrown in. It's a cool spin on the regular gameplay. Relic races are reminiscent of the time trials from Crash Warped. You need to complete 3 laps on a track as quickly as possible, while also breaking time crates to freeze time as you go. These relic races are enjoyable, but when you're going for platinum relics like I was, they can be pretty frustrating at times. Breaking all the time crates for the 10-second time reduction is required most of the time, and it can be pretty hard. But hey, I do like it hard. Finally, you've got the Coloured Gem Cups, which not only reward you with coloured gems, but also unlock Fake Crash and all the bosses excluding Oxide as playable races outside the adventure mode. These are 5 sets of 4 races where you're rewarded with points depending on your finishing position. Most points after 4 races wins. These are just standard races organised into cups, but it was fun getting to replay these tracks normally with significantly more competent computer opponents. I went through all of this. Not only did I collect all the trophies, beat the bosses, and complete the main story, I went through and beat all the Crystal Challenges, CTR Challenges, Coloured Gem Cups, and Relic Races to a Platinum level. I completed CDR's adventure mode to 101%, and it still wasn't enough. I still didn't want to put the game down. I was enjoying it too much. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. Luckily, the game has plenty to do outside of the adventure mode. Obviously, you can just play regular races in the arcade mode, but I passed on that in favour of time trials. I love time trials. Time trials in this game are tests of pure skill. There are no other races, no items, no letters or time crates, none of that silly kart racer tomfoolery. It's just you and the racetrack. I wanted to revisit all the tracks and see how well I could race on them without worrying about any other objective. And also, it was an excuse to play as all the other characters. I was starting to get sick of Crash. I do love him, but I just think we needed some time apart. Not only did I go through and complete a time trial on every track, but I also went through and beat all of Entropy's time trial ghosts and unlocked him as a playable character. Excited by the opportunity to play as a new character, I went back and did another time trial as Entropy on Crash Cove. And after demolishing Oxide's time trial ghost, I had a taste for Gazmoxian blood. I went through and beat Oxide's time trial ghost on every single track in the game, and I had an absolute blast. Even though there was no decent reward for it besides the scrapbook, I enjoyed it and it was worth it. I know time trials aren't everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone is hyper competitive and striving to be the very best. But to me, time trials are extremely fun and they're very satisfying. The feeling of outracing Oxide and setting a new personal best is just amazing. And I think the time trials in this game prove the quality of the gameplay. Even when you remove some of the most important fundamental elements of a kart racer, like the presence of items and other races, the controls, mechanics, and track design still pull through and make for a great experience on their own. I had a lot of fun going through and doing these time trials, and I think I did pretty well. I almost feel proud of it. In fact, I challenge anyone watching to try and beat my best times. But I'm warning you, I tried very hard to set these personal bests, so it won't be easy. Good luck! By this point, I had run out of things to do. I completed the adventure mode to 101%, I played as every character, I beat all of Entropy's time trial ghosts, I beat all of Oxide's time trial ghosts, I had done it all. The only thing left was the battle mode. Unfortunately, I couldn't actually play it. For the battle mode, you can't play with computer players, you need 2 or more human players, so you need at least one friend to play it with. So, yeah. I think it's obvious by now that I really loved playing Crash Team Racing to the point where I almost forgot that I was even reviewing it and just enjoyed the ride. I bled this game dry of content. I did everything I possibly could in it and didn't get bored or lose my enthusiasm at any point. That's a sign of an excellent game. This is one of the best, most engaging and most enjoyable games I've played, and I mean that. Not even just within the realm of kart races. I'm talking out of every video game that's ever existed. The only negative things I could even come up with are extremely small. Things like having driving stats linked to characters and not being able to swap characters in adventure mode I didn't like. I think there should have been a better reward for beating all of Oxide's ghosts, like for example a playable Oxide, and I also think we should have been able to play battle mode with computers so that us loners didn't miss out. Other than those minor things, Crash Team Racing is fucking fantastic. It has excellent gameplay, brilliant track design, and beautiful presentation. It's a home run. Playing this game has been a genuinely amazing experience. Is it the greatest of all time? Well, I'm not brave enough to make that claim, but I loved playing Crash Team Racing and cannot recommend it enough. I still hate driving though.